Alright, so if you've been watching my videos, you know I'm always looking for the perfect substrate for these rack systems for my ball pythons. And I pretty much started with a paper substrate, then I transitioned over to aspen, and then I pretty much landed on a coconut husk substrate. I've been using it for a couple of years. And just in the last couple of weeks, I switched over to a paper substrate, switched back to paper. And one of the reasons is because I had a fungus gnat infestation, and there's this fungus gnats flying all over the place. Some of those old videos, you see they're just buzzing all around the camera and buzzing around my head. It was pretty incredible. I couldn't believe how many gnats I had in this room. And I hung up some fly paper, and I hung up 4 strips, and they got completely covered with fungus gnats. I was like, that's it. I'm getting rid of this coconut husk. And I went all over to paper. And I'd say within just a few days, it really reduced the fungus gnats to within a week. It was probably at 0. I haven't seen a gnat at all. Pretty much, I spent the whole day in here cleaning everything, and I haven't seen a single gnat, which is pretty awesome. And I actually decided to go back to a coconut husk substrate, believe it or not, and I actually found a trick. Found it online. Someone was actually using this for their reptiles, and you can actually add springtails to your coconut husk substrate. I haven't actually tried it. I'm actually going to go and buy some springtails this week, but today what I did is I went through and replaced all the paper. And really the reason is because, you know, paper is really cheap. I've seen a lot of breeders pretty much use paper exclusively in their ball python racks, which may work for some people, but let me tell you, when I switched over to paper, my ball pythons were definitely not happy. Let me tell you, Bobby here, he was really grumpy. And essentially what happens is in the back of the tub where they sit over the heat, they can't really grip the bottom of the tub like they can with the coconut husk, so they end up sliding all over the place. I don't know what Bobby's doing, but anyways, so they end up sliding all over the place, and they really search for a place that they can get a hold of. So essentially what happens is all my ball pythons wrapped around the drinking cup holder in these ARS tubs. And it was kind of interesting. They all went up to the front of the tub and either wrapped around the drinking cup, or they kind of wedged themselves between the cup and the side of the tank. And the other thing that I noticed as well is when I went to feed them, I would say, Bobby's choking me out. All right, I give. So another thing I noticed is that when I went to feed them today, usually all my snakes, I say about 90% of them have been eating really well. And I went to feed them today, and there was only 2 out of this whole rack behind me that actually ate. And I was pretty shocked. As a matter of fact, there was one that was like aggressively snapping, like he was really mad. He did not want to be on paper. So I decided, you know, we're about 2 months away. I don't know what you're doing, Bobby. He usually doesn't choke me like that. It's kind of unusual. So we're about 2 months away from actually pairing up snakes again. And the next 2 months, it's about 8 to 10 weeks. You really have to get a lot of rodents into a lot of these snakes to get them ready to actually breed. And if the females don't get enough food in them, if they go off of food, then you can miss the breeding season and have to wait till the next year. So I decided I don't want to risk my breeding season over a change of substrate, and I went back to the coconut husk substrate. So I want to show you real quick kind of the paper setup I used, and then I want to show you what I'm using now. Alright, so I want to show you real quick what I had for my setup for when I was using paper. Essentially I was just using newspaper, and I've seen a lot of people use newspaper. It's really cheap, it's plentiful, it's free if you don't get the paper. You know, most people just have extra newspaper that they throw away, and I've seen people using this for decades in some of the big breeders. So I thought I'd give it a shot, but the problem is when the snake is sitting over here in the hot spot, he doesn't really have anywhere to grab onto. So they were all coming up here by the cup and kind of wedging themselves in here. And a lot of them were like sticking their head underneath there, and they were just hissing and snapping. They were not happy, let me tell you. And I actually have this guy in coconut husk, and I just moved him over to paper to kind of show you what this guy is like on the paper substrate. This guy is actually a scaleless head, 50% het caramel albino, and I want to breed this back to my female 100% het caramel albino, see if I can hit the scaleless head visual caramel albino. That would be really cool. And I actually have quite a few of these males, so I think I have like 3 of these males, so that'll be really cool. Hopefully between the 3 I'll actually be able to hit it. So this year probably my big project is going to be taking 2 of these guys, breeding them back, whoa, breeding them back to that caramel albino female, 100% het caramel albino. Alright, so I wanted to show you this coconut husk setup. So this is the same snake, and I just moved it over to what I'm using now. It's essentially a Pro Coco block that I soaked in water and drained, and you put the coconut husk in here. You could tell this snake is a lot more calm on coconut husk. Doesn't really want to jump out of the tub, and it has a really good grip on the bottom. It's really secure, not really sliding around and freaking out. And I think if you use a paper substrate, really you have to use it from the beginning of the snake's life. If they get used to coconut husk and you switch them back, they kind of freak out because they don't really feel as secure. So this is essentially what I went to for all my snakes, and probably the biggest problem with this is you get a lot of coconut husk in the water. So this time what I did is I actually put it down just about halfway, used a little bit less, kind of kept it away from the back. And what I want to do is essentially just drop a little of those springtail cultures in some of this stuff. And you can see if they want to get it on the hot spot, they go on the back. If they want a little bit more cool, they come up on the coconut husk. And it's to me, it works fantastic. And you just basically spot clean it, absorbs all the odors, absorbs everything. And then if they go to the bathroom in the back, essentially what I do is I just take the snake out and then just kind of wipe it down with a dilute F10 solution. And this is, other than the gnats, this has been working probably the best out of all my substrates, and I really want to stick with the coconut husk. It was just kind of a mad desperation trying to get rid of those gnats with going back to paper. But you know, let me tell you, I think there's nothing that really compares to the coconut husk substrate. All right, so another snake I want to show you is my super dwarf purple albino reticulated python. His name is Sunny, and I've been trying to pair this guy with Lucy, which is my female, for a couple years now, and they just haven't laid eggs. Lucy's just, I don't know if Lucy wasn't old enough or mature enough. She's actually 80 pounds now. This guy, I think this guy was like 35 pounds the last time we weighed him. But the funny thing is I switched this guy over to paper, and it seems like for some reason the reticulated pythons, especially this one, prefers to be on paper. And one of the reasons maybe is because this is probably one of the worst tubs that had the fungus gnats. There were so many gnats in here. It was like an infestation, mainly in this tub. And when I switched over to paper, they went away instantly. There's nothing that they can really reproduce on here. So the funny thing is this boy actually went to the bathroom over here, and I was actually trying to spot clean. So that's the problem with paper, is you got to chase the mess. And the problem is you know, if I actually put a coconut husk substrate down, I only have to change it about every 3 weeks, and then I can go through and just kind of spot clean. But with paper, if they go to the bathroom, then I have to actually go in and pull the paper. And this guy was in a crazed feeding mode, and I was trying to pull paper and use my snake hook, and let me tell you, it was pretty hairy trying to get in there and change that paper. But other than chasing the dirty paper, I think it might work better than the coconut husk. I'm still a little bit on the fence. I think the snake likes it better. I'm not sure I like to stick my hand in there every few days trying to pull out the dirty paper, but we'll see how this goes. All right, so this is Lucy, my dwarf reticulated python, and dwarf meaning she weighs about 80 pounds. She might weigh probably close to 90 because she's had quite a few rats since I actually weighed her last. And the funny thing is it's pretty much time to clean her tank. I actually kind of clean, you know, just one side. I put some paper down over here, and then over here on this side, just kind of playing around with paper, I actually pulled out some of the substrate and put down paper. But the funny thing is it's kind of a double-edged sword, I would say, with this girl. She's actually in one of her crazed feeding modes. And I don't know if you've been around reticulated pythons when they're like super, you know, hyped up in a feeding mode. They will snap at anything. They are just totally unpredictable. They're really, I mean, they are truly frightening in the feeding mode. You can tell she is ready just to lunge for another rat. I think she's had like 5 big rats in the last few days. And once you start feeding them rat after rat after rat, they get just like really hyped up and they start biting the walls and the ceiling. And actually was the thing I like about the paper is I was actually laying the rat on the paper, and when she lunges at it and grabs it, she was actually not getting substrate in her mouth. Sometimes she gets this coconut husk stuck in her mouth, and sometimes she's like, you know, yawning, trying to get the substrate out of her mouth while she's, you know, working on the rat, which I don't really like at all. But, you know, the funny thing is I actually fed her a rat, and it kind of bled all over the paper, and it was really a nasty, bloody mess. And I didn't really want anyone to see it walking by, so I thought, you know, I'm going to go in there and clean the paper. And I actually got in there and tried to pull that paper out. And this girl, I actually got in there with the snake hook, and she was biting that snake hook like crazy. She was just all hyped up over anything. She's going crazy. I thought I was going to break her tooth with the snake hook. She was just going crazy. And I finally was able to nudge her head aside and actually change that paper out. But that's one of the disadvantages of paper. When these retics get all hyped up, it's just, I don't even want to get in there. The good thing about the coconut husk is if I can actually put it in there and leave it for 3 weeks and then just kind of move her and change it, I can kind of time when I move her, because usually she goes through these cycles where she'll get all fired up for food and then she'll kind of go into a shed cycle. And then when she goes into the shed cycle, she pretty much just sits there and doesn't do anything. Then when she comes out of shed, she's really mellow and gentle, and that's usually when I move her, right after a shed cycle. But you know, she's just one of those snakes that you really have to respect a snake like this. She has some incredible power. She is a really big snake. All right, so this week I'm definitely going to go to the pet store and pick up a few containers of springtails. And the interesting thing about springtails is that they eat mold and fungus. And the thing that really caught my attention is they eat the eggs of the fungus gnats. And when I heard that, I was like, that is definitely what I need to keep these fungus gnats under control. And I think pretty much the fungus gnats came from my plants upstairs. I'm actually down here in the basement of my house, and we pretty much had this low level of persistent fungus gnats in our house plants upstairs. And I think one of those gnats came down here and found it was the perfect temperature and humidity and whatever they're eating in those snake tubs, and it just ballooned out of control. And I just couldn't believe how many gnats we had in such a short period of time. It was pretty amazing. And a lot of people say that springtails and isopods in combination in a lot of these kind of bioactive habitats, it's pretty much a self-cleaning system where you never have to change the substrate. And I'm not sure if I wanted to be totally hands-off and go to a substrate where I never have to change it. I kind of like the smell of the fresh coconut husk blocks. And probably what I'll do is, you know, pretty much when I'm coming up to cleaning day, I'll look through all my tubs and see if I can find one with a lot of springtails, and then use that to seed the rest of my new substrate throughout my whole collection. So I want to try it and see how it goes. Stay tuned. I'll keep you updated on the videos. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.